The man who promised to wait for me died before I came back. He wrote to me for 10 years, even after I disappeared. I came back too late, and then I learned he was dying. He sat here every week, waiting for me to return. His last letter changed everything. I still remember the last thing he said to me. "I'll be right here, no matter how long it takes." At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. I didn't realize those would be the last real words we'd ever share. My name is Emily, and 10 years ago I left a small town in northern Michigan with one suitcase, a half-broken heart, and a promise I never meant to keep. Back then, everyone said leaving was the best thing I could do. Bigger city, better job, a fresh start. And honestly, I believed them. What nobody understood was that leaving meant leaving him behind. Daniel and I had known each other since we were kids. Same school, same streets, same stupid summer jobs. He was the kind of person who never rushed anything. Quiet, patient, the kind of guy who listened more than he talked. And somehow he had always been there. Always. Which is probably why I thought he always would be. The night before I left, we met at the old wooden bench near Silver Lake, the place we'd gone to since high school whenever life felt too big. He didn't look angry. That almost made it worse. He just sat there with his hands folded together, staring at the water like he was memorizing it. "You really going?" he asked. I nodded. "It's just a job, Dan. It's not forever." He gave this small smile, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. "You always say that." I didn't answer, because deep down I knew he was right. He stood up slowly and shoved his jacket into pockets. "I'll wait," he said. I laughed a little, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. "You don't have to wait for me." But he shook his head. "I want to." There was something about the way he said it that made me uncomfortable, like he already knew something I didn't. So I did the easiest thing possible. I left. No dramatic goodbye, no hug, no looking back. Just got in my car and drove until the town disappeared in the rearview mirror. For a while he called. Then he texted. Then the messages slowed down. And eventually, they stopped. I figured he had moved on. People always do. 10 years passed before I heard his name again. And it happened on a random Tuesday afternoon when a small brown package showed up at my apartment door. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in a decade. The moment I recognized it, my hands started to shake, because I knew exactly who it was from. And when I opened the box and saw what was inside, I realized Daniel had never stopped waiting for me. But what scared me the most was the date on the first letter, because it was written just 3 weeks ago, and that shouldn't have been possible, because according to the woman on the phone that morning, Daniel had died 2 months ago. I didn't open the letters right away. The box sat on my kitchen table for almost an hour while I just stared at it, like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. My apartment was completely quiet, except for the ticking clock above the stove, and somehow that sound felt louder than usual. Daniel was dead. That was what the woman on the phone had said. Her voice had been gentle but distant, like she was talking about a stranger. "I'm sorry, Daniel passed away 2 months ago." At first, I thought she had the wrong number, but she knew my name. She knew I had moved away years ago. She even knew Daniel used to talk about me. That part made my chest tighten, because I hadn't talked about him in a long time, not to anyone. And yet somehow he had been talking about me, still. I finally pulled the box closer and lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of envelopes, stacked neatly and tied together with a thin piece of faded blue ribbon. The sight of them made my stomach twist. Each envelope had my name written across the front in Daniel's familiar handwriting, steady and careful, just like I remembered. Emily Carter. Seeing my name written by him after all these years felt strangely intimate, like he had reached across time just to find me. The first envelope was dated almost 10 years ago, just a few weeks after I left. My fingers hesitated before opening it. The paper inside was slightly yellowed, folded twice. "Hey, Em," it began. Just 2 words, and suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. Nobody had called me Em in years. "I know you're busy building your new life. I don't want to bother you. I just wanted you to know I'm still here. Same town, same bench, same lake." I swallowed hard and unfolded the rest. "You said it wasn't forever. I believe you." I quickly grabbed the next letter. 6 months later. Then another. 1 year later. 2 years. 3. He wrote about everything. The changing seasons, the old diner closing down, the first snow every winter. Ordinary things that somehow felt enormous because he had written them to me. Not once did he sound angry. Not once did he blame me. Every letter ended the same way. Still waiting. My vision started to blur as I reached for the final envelope, the one dated 3 weeks ago. The paper inside looked newer, but the handwriting wasn't quite the same. The letters looked thinner, shakier, like they had taken effort. "Hey, Em. I don't know if this one will reach you, but I hope it does." My hands trembled as I kept reading. "If you're reading this, it means I finally asked someone to send these." My heart began pounding. "It means I figured it was time you knew the truth." There was a long pause before the next line, like he had struggled to write it. I tried to wait as long as I could. My throat tightened, because suddenly I understood what he meant. But the last sentence made my blood run cold. "I kept my promise, but I need you to come back now." At the bottom of the letter, instead of his usual signature, there was something else. A short message written in different handwriting. "Emily, he asked me to mail these after the funeral." And underneath that was a name I didn't recognize. But what terrified me most was the note written in the corner of the envelope. 3 simple words. She never came. I booked the flight that same night. I didn't even pack properly, just threw clothes into a suitcase and left before I could talk myself out of it. The whole drive to the airport felt unreal, like I was watching someone else make decisions I should have made years ago. 10 years. 10 years, and I never once went back. Not for holidays, not for visits, not even for a weekend. Somewhere along the way, it had just become easier to pretend that part of my life was over. But now, sitting on that plane, holding Daniel's last letter in my hands, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. I kept my promise. Over and over, those words echoed in my head. What kind of person waits 10 years? What kind of person writes letters to someone who never answers? And the worst question of all, what kind of person walks away from someone like that? By the time the plane landed, my chest felt heavy with a kind of guilt I didn't know how to carry. The town looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I had just changed. The same gas station stood near the highway exit. The same grocery store sign flickered in the afternoon light. Even the streets felt familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. It was like time had paused here, like nothing had moved on except me. I checked into a small roadside motel
and barely set my bag down before calling the number written at the bottom of the last envelope. The name I didn't recognize. The phone rang twice before someone answered. A woman, soft voice, careful tone. "Hello?" "Hi, my name is Emily," I said, my voice barely steady. I think you knew Daniel." There was a long silence. Then she said quietly, "I was wondering if you'd call." That sentence alone made my heart drop. Her name was Rachel. She told me she had been Daniel's nurse during the last year of his life. The last year. I gripped the phone tighter. "What happened to him?" I asked. Another pause, like she was choosing her words carefully. "Did he tell you?" My stomach sank. "Tell me what?" When she spoke again, her voice sounded gentler than before. "Daniel was sick for a long time." The room suddenly felt too small. What kind of sick? There was a quiet breath on the other end. "Cancer." The word hit me like a physical blow. Late stage, diagnosed 4 years ago. Treatments that didn't work, hospital visits that became longer and closer together. All that time, and I never knew. Rachel told me he kept the letters in a wooden box beside his bed. Said he never missed a month, even when writing became painful, even when his hands shook. He said it helped him wait, she told me. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Wait for what? Her answer came softly. For you. Tears blurred my vision. Then she said something that made my entire body go still. "Emily, there's something else." My grip tightened around the phone. "What?" Another pause. "He refused to move out of his house." "Why?" Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Because he said you wouldn't know where to find him." My chest felt like it was collapsing inward, but nothing prepared me for what she said next. "I think you should see something he left for you." I swallowed hard. "What is it?" And then she said the words that made my hands start shaking again. "It's still exactly where he kept it." A small pause. "On the bench by the lake."
I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel sitting on that old wooden bench, the same way he had the night I left, quiet, patient, like time didn't matter to him. By morning, I couldn't wait any longer. The air was cold and sharp as I drove toward the lake, the kind of early morning chill that seeps through your clothes. The road felt smaller than I remembered, lined with the same tall trees that used to look enormous when we were kids. Nothing had changed, and somehow that made everything worse. When I pulled into the small gravel lot near the water, my hands were already trembling. For a moment, I just sat there with the engine running. Part of me didn't want to get out, because as long as I stayed in the car, this was still just a story, just letters and memories and things I could pretend weren't real. But eventually, I opened the door. The cold air hit my face as I stepped out and walked toward the path. The lake came into view slowly, just beyond the trees, calm and gray under the morning sky. It looked exactly the same as it had 10 years ago. And then I saw it. The bench. Same faded wood. Same uneven legs. Same place facing the water. My steps slowed as I got closer. It felt wrong walking toward it alone, like someone should have been there before me, like someone had been there. When I finally reached the bench, I stopped. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual, just the worn wood and faint scratches carved into the surface, initials, dates, little marks left by people passing through. Then I saw it. something tucked in the corner where the seat met the backrest, a small metal box. My heart started pounding as I reached for it. It was cold to the touch and heavier than it looked. The lid creaked slightly when I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper and something else, a photograph. I picked it up first. It was us, taken the summer before I left. We were standing right in front of this same lake. I was laughing at something he had said, and Daniel was looking at me, not at the camera. I stared at the picture for a long time before unfolding the paper beneath it. The handwriting was shakier than the last letter, but it was still his. "Hey, Em, if you're reading this, you finally came back." My throat tightened as I kept going. "I used to sit here a lot after you left. At first, I thought maybe you'd come back in a few months. Then I thought maybe a year. After that, I just stopped guessing." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I kept coming anyway. I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying to keep steady enough to read the last lines. Some days I stayed for hours. Near the end, it got harder to walk down here. I felt something inside me break quietly, but I didn't want to miss the day you came back. My hands shook as I read the final sentence. I waited as long as I could. Below it was his name, Daniel, and underneath that, one last line, written much smaller than the rest. "I came here the day before the hospital." My breath caught in my chest because suddenly I understood what that meant. He had been here, sick, weak, barely able to walk, still waiting. But as I wiped my eyes and looked closer at the inside of the metal box, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Taped to the bottom was a small folded hospital wristband, and when I turned it over and read the date printed on it, my heart nearly stopped, because it showed the day he was admitted, the same day he wrote his last letter, which meant there was only one question left. If he came here that day, then what happened after he left the bench?
I sat on that bench for a long time, holding the hospital wristband in my hands. The thin plastic strip felt impossibly light for something that carried so much weight. His name was printed across it in faded black letters, Daniel Harper. Underneath it was the day he was admitted to the hospital, the same day he came here, the same day he wrote his last letter, which meant he had walked all the way to this bench knowing he probably wouldn't come back again. The thought made my chest ache in a way that felt deeper than guilt. It felt permanent, like something that couldn't ever be fixed. Eventually, the cold forced me to stand. My legs felt stiff as I walked back to the car, the metal box held carefully in my arms like something fragile. I drove straight to the small house Daniel had lived in his entire life. Rachel had given me the address, though I didn't need it. I could have found that house with my eyes closed. White siding, small front porch, the same crooked mailbox leaning slightly to the left. It looked exactly the way I remembered, quiet and still, like it had been waiting too. The front door was locked, but Rachel had left a key under the flower pot. My hands shook as I picked it up. For a second, I just stood there staring at the door. 10 years ago, I had walked away from this place without a second thought. Now, it felt like stepping into something sacred. The door creaked softly when I pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled faintly like old wood and laundry detergent, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. Nothing had changed. The same couch, the same lamp in the corner, even the old clock on the wall was still ticking steadily, like time had refused to move forward without him. I walked slowly down the hallway toward his bedroom. The door was slightly open, and when I pushed it wider, my breath caught. His bed was neatly made. A wooden chair sat beside it, and next to the chair was the box Rachel had told me about, the one that used to sit beside his bed. The lid was already open. Inside were copies of the letters he had sent me, every single one, stacked in perfect order. But that wasn't what made my heart stop. Resting on top of the stack was a smaller envelope, my name written across the front. Emily. Different from the others, cleaner, like he had taken extra care with this one. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Hey, Em. Rachel is probably the one who gave this to you." I swallowed hard and kept reading. "If you're here, then I guess I was right. You came back." Tears blurred the words. "I used to worry you'd feel guilty. Please don't. You gave me something most people never get. Someone worth waiting for." My hands trembled as I reached the last lines. I wasn't alone all those years. I had hope, and that was enough. I pressed the paper against my chest, trying to breathe through the tears. But there was one last sentence at the bottom, shorter than the rest, almost like an afterthought. "I knew you'd come back eventually. You always did." And for the first time since opening that package, I realized something that broke my heart in a completely different way. Daniel hadn't waited because he was lonely. He hadn't waited because he had no one else. He waited because he believed in something I stopped believing in years ago. Us. And the truth I have to live with now is that he kept his promise right up until his last breath. And I only kept mine when it was already too late.